Greetings. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 101 of Bandwidth and Banter. Holy crap. Last week, we had our 100th episode. It was a special episode where we interviewed each other and had the community interview us at the same time. And it was epic. It was our longest interview ever. We went over 2 hours.
And I cried.
And you cried again. It was your fifth time.
It's 5 times now I have cried on Bandwidth and Banter.
Was it fifth or fourth? I don't remember.
I think it was. I think it might have been my 4th time, actually. But
well, I'll endeavor to make you cry all the time. Then, no, I'm just kidding. That sounds wrong. I mean that in the sweetest way possible, like happy cry. Like I'm one of those kind of guys who has a hard time crying at sad things, but put some like movie or show in front of me that's got those happy, wholesome, amazing moments, and I'm just like, oh. Yeah.
So what are we doing today, Stormy?
What was that?
What are we doing today, Stormy?
We're interviewing our next person, and we're super excited. This person came to us through 2 amazing folks who we've had on the show before, both Iltacine and Mr. Taco, who is now just Taco, suggested this amazing human being, and we've been lurking in his channel and getting to know him a little bit, and you guys are going to like him, and he's exactly the kind of folk that we like to lift up and highlight, because he's full of positivity and love, and it has a great vibe. So without further ado, let's introduce the succulent and tart well-bred grapefruit. There he is. By the way, did we just get raided?
By Iltacine, yeah.
Oh my God, Ilt, with the raid. Arigato gozaimasu. Thank you for the raid. Your timing is impeccable. To just ruin your friend's intro. I'm just kidding. So, well-bred
I needed
grapefruit.
a moment to recover from being unironically referred to as succulent. So I appreciate the brief delay. That allowed me to compose myself.
You're welcome. Please, well-bred grapefruit, reintroduce yourself and share a little bit about your stream and what you'd like to highlight.
So I'm well-bred grapefruit, and I was just telling Druid and Stormy before we got started, it's probably not a great name because it's so long that nobody ever actually calls me well-bred grapefruit. So I am well-bred grapefruit, Wubbaga, bread, fruity, grape, like just any possible way you can think of to shorten it. People have found ways to shorten it.
It's beautiful.
But what I do with my channel, the way that I talk about it, I was diagnosed a few years ago with ADHD, and I'm 40, so that was 37 years of my life that I lived with that without knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I've come to understand about that, the more that I've come to understand how that influences the kinds of things that I enjoy in video gaming. And so a lot of the stuff that I stream, I refer to as, and I say this with all positivity, as you were saying earlier, they're kind of my ADHD traps. So automation games, base building games, colony management games, all of those things that can really grab hold of you with the complexity and the to-do list that's 30 things long, and there's always something else to go do when you get bored.
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff that I love to play. And I didn't really have, I have some friends that I play games with a lot, but they don't really like those games. And I still enjoy hanging out with them. But one of the big reasons that I got into streaming was to build a community around this part of gaming that I'm passionate about. And I've been really fortunate over the past year or so to be able to do that with some of the great people here on Twitch.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
It's beautiful.
Fantastic.
It is absolutely beautiful. But we're gonna jump right in. Well-bred grapefruit, please share a boring fact about yourself.
Boring fact. I've never broken a bone in my body.
Interesting.
Is that boring? Is that boring? No, he said interesting. So I guess.
Well, it's interesting because you're right. It is boring, but it is interesting. You know what I'm saying? That's why we like that question so much. You have that in common. It's interesting because you have that in common with her.
Mm-hmm. Never.
And definitely do not have it in common.
It was all the milk, right?
Mm-hmm.
You drank your milk?
Drank a ton of milk. Mm-hmm.
You drank your milk? I drank my, that's what it is. Drink your milk, kids.
I did this to her before when she's, somehow this has come up before in previous interviews, and I hate to burst you guys' bubble, but it's very unlikely that that's true. If you've ever stubbed your pinky toe, you more than likely broke it. Medical science shows that almost every time you stub your toe, it actually breaks it a little bit. So
Okay. I didn't have to put a cast on.
Major bones, I agree.
Are you just going to be raining on my parade the whole time? Is that what this next hour is going to be? Is you tearing down my achievements in life, Stormy? Come on.
Tearing down your achievements, yes, exactly. It really is an achievement because I was dumb as balls as a kid and broke both my arms, not at the same time, at different times. Basically doing the same thing, which proves that I'm just dumb as balls. But
let's say you're persistent. That's
persistently dumb.
We can spin it.
All right, getting back into the nitty-gritty of the interview, because this is about you. How did you pick your Twitch name? What was the inspiration?
So it's kind of funny because it's actually it was originally conceived of as a personal professional brand for me back in before this is like 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. And so I've actually had my little logo and everything. I had a designer put together for me literally 15 years ago, and it's just been sitting in a folder on my Dropbox for forever. And when I wanted to get into Twitch, I was like, hey, I've got this there. I can use this. But the origin of the name, actually, and this is both super nerdy and kind of esoteric all at once, but it's based on a quote from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Mm-hmm. And the quote, one of the characters in the book says, life is like a grapefruit. It's orange and round and has a few pips in it, and some folks have half of one for breakfast. And that quote just kind of stuck in my head ever since the first time I read that book. And it just is I love Douglas Adams, the absurdity of his writing and the extreme extent of his metaphors and everything that he pulls together. The ship hung in the air in much the same way that bricks don't, right, is kind of the famous one there. But that stuck in my head as just a quote that I loved and turned over in my head. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, life is like a grapefruit is kind of a funny quote. And, we have this notion of having a well-bred life, you're well-educated and all these other things. And so there's kind of a well-bred grapefruit is kind of like a well-bred life, right? If we run with that analogy. So again, how did I not know that I had ADHD before I was 37 with that kind of train of thought? But it did lead to kind of a unique brand, right, that I was able to lean into. So
right on. I admire and appreciate that. I'm a big fan of Douglas Adams as well. I don't know if I've read any of his other works other than his entire Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, but I have read that series. And I need to read some of his other stuff too. If he has
the other big one is the Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which they made a really interesting television adaptation of that with what's his name, Frodo from Lord of the Rings. I don't know. It's Friday afternoon. Names are gone. Elijah Wood was in it. Yeah,
interesting.
But yeah, that's the other big one that people go to. But I celebrate the man's entire catalog. So
let's go. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. WellBredGrapefruit, what D&D class do you consider yourself to be in real life?
I'm gonna go with Paladin on this. And not so in what I do for a living, I run software engineering teams. And so I don't mean that in the sense of I am a paladin because I am the high and mighty lawful good who is, overwhelmed with noble and righteous duty. I mean that in the way that it is literally what I get paid to do to keep people from murder hoboing, as the party, right? I'm the guy who is there to keep everybody in check and say, no, we can't do that. That's against the rules. Let's slow down and reevaluate our options, please.
That's a great freaking answer. Very well thought out.
So not like in lore am I a paladin, but in the like I'm the guy playing the paladin at the table kind of sense.
I like it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
incredible.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
All right, digging a little deeper into you and your stream. What is your favorite tea to brew for streaming?
Ooh. Kind of depends. Is there any less honest answer to a question like that than it kind of depends? It's hard to go wrong with a Assam. As far as just the general black tea varietals, that's really the go-to. A good spiced chai is always a good option. I think especially in the autumn and early winter when things have just started getting cold. That's a really good go-to. And then there's another one that I love mostly for the novelty. They call it a black dragon pearl, which is it's a rolled tea. So they take it and they roll it into little balls. That's why they call it the black dragon pearls before they let it dry. And it's interesting for a couple of different reasons. One, just the experience of, putting that in the water and watching the balls kind of unfold. But don't clip that, Ilt. I can hear you thinking it. But two, just the way that some of the outer leaves end up protecting the inner leaves from steeping, you get a lot of depth to the flavor as the tea steeps. So, I think that's another good one that's there as like if you really want to do something interesting, that's kind of an interesting option.
I want to extend this just a little bit, if you don't mind. How did you get into tea to such a degree, and what made you think to kind of incorporate that into your stream?
Well, again, you would never know that I had ADHD. One of the things that tends to be really common among people who have undiagnosed ADHD is they are surprised to learn that they've actually been self-medicating most of their life, particularly with caffeine. And with finding new and novel ways to bring caffeine into their life. At one of the earlier points in my career, I happened to work with somebody who is a big advocate for loose leaf teas and introduced me to a couple of websites where they sell it. This is starting to sound like they introduced me to their drug dealer or something, but it's not a terrible
exactly
analogy.
How it feels, though. Yeah.
But it was... and that was really interesting, something that I could explore. I know a lot of people are really into coffee. And I really enjoy coffee, don't get me wrong. I can't live without coffee. I love coffee. I have never been able to get into coffee to the extent that some people do, where it's like, you have to do it in an AeroPress, or you have to have the Chemex, and you have to weigh your beans out by weight. And there's nothing wrong with people who can do that. But to me, at the end of the day, it was all coffee. And I blame that on my dad. I grew up, he would make coffee that was so thick you could stand a spoon up in it. And I think it just kind of burned any sensibilities I had for good coffee out at an early point in my life. And Iltacine just clipped it anyway. Okay, I saw that in chat. Anyway, so tea was kind of another way for me to get into that and explore a world of complexity where I could actually tell the difference between loose leaf or the finely chopped bag stuff, and you have all the bigger varieties. It's not just is it light or dark, but it's like is it black, is it green, is it white, what region did it come from? Like there's a much bigger difference in the flavor profiles, and so it was just something that I could really nerd out about. And I had someone who was a frequent visitor on my stream who was like, you should let us have a routine. This is just, I'm early enough in streaming. Like people are like, you should have a routine to do this. And I'm like, okay, let me code that up tomorrow. And like, that's where it is.
Right. Thank you for indulging me.
That was beautiful. No, I as somebody who has been diagnosed with ADHD by the internet, and all of my friends and everybody I've ever talked to in my life, not a medical professional. So definitely, yes, the caffeine is 100% that like self-medication for sure. But in the way you're talking about tea, and the diving into the history and the story and the background and the this and the that and the flavor profiles is exactly how I feel about coffee.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, they
It's beautiful.
they have a thing in the scientific world called a material safety data sheet, right? And they calculate for any given sub. They have one of these for everything. You can get it for water and table salt and hydrochloric acid and all those other things. One of the stats that they put on that sheet is called LD50, which stands for lethal dose 50%.
Okay.
And what that represents is they take the chemical and they feed it to typically rats until 50% of them have demonstrated like a lethal response to the chemical. And then they kind of calculate that by weight and say, oh, okay, so basically because of the similarities between rats and humans, we can expect that if a human ingested this much of this material based on their body weight, they'd have a 50-50 shot of dying because of, basically the overdose. When I was in college, I did the math at one point and I was doing LD25 worth of caffeine every day.
Wow. Scary.
Between coffee and Mountain Dew and all the caffeinated things you used to be able to get off of ThinkGeek back when that was actually a website. And
wow.
so yeah, it's been a big part of my life, caffeine, and I can't give it up.
I love it. So yeah, yes, it's beautiful. In your other life as a software consultant, you must have come across some hilarious hot takes by engineers. What is something that left you speechless in a meeting room or other facepalm moments you are willing to share with us on the internet?
Probably the most speechless that I have been in a professional context. I had just gotten hired at a company. I'd been hired as a senior manager. And there was a peer that I had who was also a senior manager. I didn't know at the time that was his first, like he had been a senior manager for a couple of weeks. He had just moved over from an engineering role. He had never been a manager before.
Oh.
But I was approaching like he's a peer. He's somebody who's at a similar point in his career as I am. And I remember talking to him, and there's some generally accepted practice, and it gets called a lot of things like the 2 pizza rule, right? If you have a team that's so big that you can't feed the team with 2 pizzas, your team is too big. You have too much on your plate. You need to group things out. It's kind of generally accepted knowledge that you have 8 to 10 people is typically the max that you can manage. You can flex a little bit on that either way, depending on how well suited people are for the role and how much complexity they have in terms of their workload on their plate, all that other stuff. But that's like a good ballpark. And I was talking to this other senior manager, and I was just saying, hey, like I'm looking at the hiring plans that I have here, and it looks like the teams that I'm managing, I'm going to be up around 16 people by the end of the year. So I'm probably also going to need to bring in a manager to report to me to help like split that group up. And he just looked at me and he said, why? Why is that a problem? And I was like, because that's too many people?
Because?
And he was just like, but why is that too many people? If you have 16 people and you do a one-on-one with each of them, you have a 30-minute meeting with each of them every week, that's 8 hours. That's one day. What are you doing with the other 4 days of your week? And I was just like, I can't eat, like, it was almost kind of like he had started arguing, like, the sky is purple. I'm like, I don't even know. How do I begin? Like, do you know what a manager does? Like, you don't just have a 30-minute meeting with everybody once a week and walk away. That's not the job.
Yeah.
So it was so I don't know if that's exactly like in the spirit of the question, because it was like hot takes from engineer, but that one in particular, I just remember sitting there going like, huh? Like, how do I start to respond to you about that?
Excuse me, what?
That was my brain was doing the whole Scooby-Doo thing whenever he said that. But
I loved Scooby-Doo growing up. Oh,
so great.
So, WellBred Grapefruit, please share. This might be a bit too much, but why did you force those kids to mine coal?
Okay. Iltacine submitted that question. He is referring to one of the first games that I streamed after after I had moved on from Dyson Sphere Program, which was the game that I started with. I had several people suggest Frostpunk to me, and if you don't know Frostpunk, it's set in a 19th century alternate history where the world went through this really great second ice age, and you're leading survivors. And it forces you to make a lot of really tough decisions in order to survive. And it's a really bleak game at the end of the day. And one of the very first decisions I made in that game when prompted was, we were not getting enough coal to keep everybody warm. We didn't have enough workers, not mining coal, but picking coal up off the ground above on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the option to say, let's have some children help out and have them join the workforce, but only for safe jobs. So we're not sending them into the mines. We're not asking them to hunt animals. We're not doing all these things. We're just asking them to go pick up rocks off the ground because we can burn these rocks to stay warm. And Iltacine has never let go of the fact that meant that I was sending kids to work in the coal mines ever since then. That has been his determined interpretation of that particular history.
I love it. I love it. We all, as streamers, have those moments that our community will never let us live down.
The chat
Yes.
just runs away with an idea and will not let it go.
Mhm.
And sometimes you just have to say, okay, do your thing.
That's how the fart army was born in my chat. I get it.
Also, this is the color blue.
And this is the color blue. Yeah, I get it. My channel trailer is me not understanding a joke. I get how ruthless chat can be. It's so great though. WellBredGrapefruit, what drew you to Twitch?
Sorry, what was that?
What drew you to
Oh,
Twitch?
What drew me to Twitch? I was talking about a little bit of this earlier. I, have these ADHD magnet games. And I have some friends that I game with who don't really like playing those games to the same degree. And I had been kind of getting a lot of community through YouTube videos in a lot of ways, and spending a lot of time like, oh, this person plays Dyson Sphere Program, or this person plays Satisfactory or whatever, and they have all this content, and I can go watch those videos and learn. But Dyson Sphere Program it's had kind of a special place in my heart, like ever since it came out. It was one of those games where it was on my wish list. Through it, and I got it the night it came out, and was just like, I'm gonna sit down and play this. And I sat down. I remember sitting down at 9:00, and I felt like I'd played it for about an hour and a half, and like, this is really good. I've never played a game like this before. This is awesome. But it's a little after 10. I should go to bed. And I close the game, and I see the clock down in the corner of my screen, and it's 2:30 in the morning, and I'm like, I must really like this game.
I feel that.
But I hadn't played it for a while. I'd gotten pulled into Factorio and Satisfactory and Oxygen Not Included and a few other things. And last December, Dyson Sphere Program was getting ready to launch this really big, they called it the Dark Fog update. It was this big update. They were adding combat and a whole bunch of new stuff into the game. And I was like, I need to get back into playing it, and I need to, I want to kind of get my reflexes back a little bit, and almost just kind of on a whim, I was like, let me go look at Twitch, and like maybe there's somebody streaming that I can like hang out, and maybe I can chat a little bit. And I found a stream. Tholen 1000 is the guy's name. He's up in Canada, and he really, really cool guy. He had also just started. I found him on like the third day he was streaming. I was like one of the 2 or 3 people that was in there talking to him. But I was like, this guy, he was a retired engineer, and he's a dad, and he just really loves these games, and he was just doing it to like have fun, build community, all that. And I was like, this is me. Like, I can do this too, and like this gives me a way to access the community. And so I just kind of leaned in and started doing it, and it was through Tholen that I met Iltacine and Firehammer and TFG and a lot of the guys that were really instrumental in helping me kind of grow my audience and reach out and build a little bit more of a community. And that was, it's just kind of kept rolling, right? Like you get that momentum, and it feels good especially, I think a lot of people have maybe not had great 2024s at the end of the day. Like there's been a lot that's happened throughout the year.
Yeah.
And this has been something that I can wake up every morning and be excited that I, get to go play games and hang out with people that I like hanging out with doing it.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
Nice.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Thank you. That's a great story. On that same note, what did family and friends think when you told them you planned on streaming?
I didn't. I probably should have. There was a really kind of a fun incident that happened at one point when my wife came. So early days, I used to have a green screen that I would hang up behind me and just kind of like block out my background. And my wife came in at one point one evening when I was just hanging out doing a stream, and she was like, "Is everything okay? Like, why are you hiding behind a curtain over at your computer with your webcam on?" And so I like pulled up the video and showed her what I was doing and everything, and I was like, "It's just a hobby. I wasn't sure if it was going to work out." I think I killed Druid. I'm sorry, Druid.
He broke her. It's so funny. It's hilarious. I can just imagine some of the thoughts going through her head.
For sure, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
But no, I mean, for the most part, like people are supportive, right? I mean, I feel a little weird saying this. I feel like kind of if I had IRL friends, if you will, who were into these games, I wouldn't have been streaming it. So it's not that surprising that they're not showing up. They're like in the stream every day talking about, but yeah, it's a hobby. It's an outlet. It's a way in a lot of ways for me to be creative and again, build community. And I think, people are generally, really supportive and see it as a positive influence.
I love it. I love it. What struggles did you deal with when you first started streaming?
Probably a lot of the usual stuff. I think getting comfortable speaking to no one is that one thing that like everybody has to deal with. And I mean that both literally, like the first couple of times I streamed, nobody was there. Nobody knew who I was, and it's just like, I'm just talking into the void. But even then it's a very different dynamic. And, the work that I do from home. I live in South Carolina, which is not exactly the mecca for tech startups, right? So I have to do remote work. And this is like communicating like I am with y'all right now, where we're doing it over video, very comfortable for me.
Yeah.
Because it's what I do. It's what I've been doing for 16 years. Talking to people who can only talk back to me via text with a 5-second delay because of all the lag and everything that's built into that system. There's some different communication norms that you have to figure out, in order to be able to do that fluidly. And that is something that felt a little awkward. And then I think just kind of finding a personality, I guess I would say, is the other one. Because it's not the kind of thing, you can go look and you can find here are 50 things to do on Twitch to grow your audience or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We've all seen the things, and you look through the list of channel redeems that you can implement and all that. And a lot of them are not me. Right. And that kind of forces me to confront what is me.
Yeah.
That's grammatically inaccurate, but you know what I mean. What kind of presence do I want to have on Twitch, and how do I want to reach people? And I don't really, my thing again, I'm very community oriented in terms of how I want to go. I'm not in this to make money, and there's not anything wrong with people doing it to make money. I don't want to say that at all. But for me, it is a hobby. It's a community thing. I want to be able to hang out with people. And so there's a lot of stuff out there that is here's what you do to drive your engagement up and get your followers up and get people subscribing. And here's how you get them to spend bits. And I'm like, well, that's not, it's a little bit different for me. And so trying to parse through all that and find a way that feels authentic to have a to have a positive interactive experience with folks is something that you don't really get the opportunity to think about until you're all of a sudden in the middle of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, this is a
Yup.
nice segue into the next question, which is what tips can you share with future streamers? Because you
I
seem to
love
have some great
segues.
insights here.
I love segues. I think along those same lines, like, be open, be adaptive, figure out what works for you, and be willing to experiment and try some things. I think is probably at the top of the mind. Like, I say this a lot with people who begin working remotely, coming out of an office environment, because I don't think they realize how much of like what it means to work in an office is like coded societally, is coded into your brain already. Because we're just surrounded by that culture. And then once you start working from home, you have all this freedom and you almost don't know what to do with it, And so I have to try to coach people through just slow down and experiment and be open to the idea that the first thing you think is going to work may not be the thing that works. And I think streaming is kind of the same thing in a slightly different way, right? Like my experience of what it was like to be a streamer. I mentioned I was watching Nilaus and Total Eclipse and all these big streamers who their content is oriented around getting a bunch of hits on YouTube and driving people to Patreon pages. And again, like, there's not anything wrong with that, but that in my head was what a streamer does and how a streamer produces content. And kind of realizing that was something that I had that like kind of that bias in my head, and working to dismantle that. Like, I kind of wish I had a head start on that. So it's kind of abstract, and I'm sorry, it's how my brain works, but
It's beautiful.
I think that's the big thing. If you want to start getting into streaming, like, lean into the idea that like you're going to have to go through that awkward teen discovery phase for a couple of months before you figure it out, and that's okay. Like, that's part of the process.
Indeed.
It's normal. It's normal to
Your
feel
body's
awkward.
going to go through changes.
Yep, exactly. There's going to be some growing pains. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. What do you enjoy most about streaming? I do feel like you've touched on this, but I guess elaborate. What do you enjoy most about streaming?
Yeah, I think, again, it's the community. It's the idea that I'm pausing for a second because I want to figure out how to say this in a way that doesn't sound self-aggrandizing, but it's that sense that like there are people that are looking forward to me being online. Like, it's something that they're kind of anticipating in that positive way. And this is where I say I don't want to sound self-aggrandizing. It's not like, yeah, people depend on me for their happiness in the morning, like, but more of that sense that, like, you may not want to, you may have made plans to go hang out with a friend later, right? But like maybe you don't feel like doing it, but you make yourself do it anyway because they're looking forward to it. And that once you get there, you're going to have a good time, right? Like, it's that kind of sense, right? Of like, yeah, this is going to be, I'm going to go do something and we're going to have a good time together and it's going to be great. Like, I think that's the core kind of emotional response that I have there.
Right on. Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you for your candor on that. How long have you been playing, switching gears a little bit here, how long have you been playing video games, and what was the first one you ever played?
My dad was a real early adopter for tech growing up. So I grew up in the late 80s. We had an Atari. We were one of the first kids on our neighborhood to have an NES when that came out. He had what we affectionately referred to as the Trash 80. The Radio Shack, the TRS-8. You know what I'm talking about.
I had a Trash 80 too. I learned to code basic on a Trash 80.
Yeah, we had gorillas.bass on a Trash 80, and going in and just like messing around with the like changing the numbers, and I knew nothing about coding at the time, but going in and changing numbers in that basic file just to see what would happen. What would happen is the monkeys would go bananas. But so I think those are playing Pitfall on the Atari, playing Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt companion cassette for the NES, playing Gorillas and Snake, the basic games on DOS. There was one game we had, one of those DOS games that I remember where like a baby would jump out of a burning building and you were playing firefighters who had to like trampoline the baby to safety. And I mostly remember that game because, back then CPUs all ran at 33 megahertz.
Mm-hmm.
And so people coded video games just assuming that like X CPU cycles is a second. And that's how they did their timing. And we got an upgrade for a computer that did the 66 megahertz chips, which were twice as fast.
Yep.
And those came, you remember, with the turbo button, right? Where you could like turn it off to have it reset to 33 megahertz. And I remember sitting there just like turning the turbo button on and off with that game on, watching the babies like fall normally and then suddenly just like rapid fire bounce off the screen. And it's kind of a morbid pastime, but like stuff like that, right? Like just really experimenting around the edges of like how do these video games work is a lot of what I remember about my childhood with gaming.
Nice.
That is so beautiful. I love that so much. Everybody's smashing buttons in chat now. It's beautiful.
You got to smash the button.
Gotta smash the buttons. What is your favorite game and your least favorite game that you have played on stream?
Favorite game that I've played, and this is one of those things that comes with ADHD. Favorites is hard. Least favorite is easy, though. I'll start there. I had a stream. I have a redeem on my stream where you can hit a button and call a stream and make a suggestion. And I'm sorry, Glow, if you're. I don't know if you're here in chat, but it was Glow is a guy who'd been in chat, and he was really excited because he saw that I had a game in my library that I'd gotten from a Humble Bundle or something and never played, but it's a game that he loves. It's one of his favorite games, and it's a game called Spelunky. And if you're not familiar with Spelunky, it is it's kind of like an Indiana Jones themed platformer where you're moving through dungeons and everything.
Yep.
And it is almost designed to be an incredibly punishing and frustrating experience wrapped up in a cutesy cartoon package.
Yep.
And I'm sure a lot of it was the circumstances of like me having no idea what I'm doing. And then I'm jumping into this really hard game on stream for the first time with a public audience. Like there's a lot of that circumstance that went into it. But I was just like, yeah, I don't, no, thanks. That's fine. And favorite is always hard. It's always hard. I mean, I'll tell you the one that I just really can't put down right now. Maybe I'll go with that as kind of a non-answer. Is Soul Mask, which is really interesting. It's early access, but it's got a lot of polish to it. And the thing that I love about it is it really seamlessly combines aspects of a survival craft game and an automation game and a colony management game all into one package. And so that's kind of like the Venn diagram of things that push my ADHD buttons. And that's like right in the center of all three of those. So that's been an awful lot of fun to play. And I think it helps doing it on stream too, that it's a new enough game and there's a lot of people that are excited about it and want to watch it and want to learn how it works and want to share tips. And that's been really enjoyable to play the past few weeks.
Right on. Great answers. Thank you. And diving into this after doing some research into you and some of the games that you're into and what you show on your about section, I found that we are kindred spirits in the love of turn-based strategy games like Civilization, for example. And so I have to ask, have you ever played Mom, Mu2, and or any other obscure 4X games?
Mu2 definitely. Mu2 I played pretty extensively. And I don't know if we have this in common or not, Stormy, but I'm gonna go out on a limb too and say how remarkably disappointed I was with Mu3 when it came out.
I didn't even bother. I read reviews and stuff. I'm like, that people are saying it's not worth getting, and so I didn't even try it. So.
It couldn't capture the same magic.
On that same note, speaking of magic, the remake of Master of Magic is decent. Just play the original though.
Okay. No. Good to know.
Had you played Mom, Master of Magic?
I had not played Master of Magic. A lot of my so there's kind of a weird gap in my video game history.
Uh-huh.
I got into a lot of video games early.
Sure.
Again, because of that tech early adopter scene and everything, right?
Yeah.
I played Civilization 1.
Me too. First
We
game I
had
ever
the
bought.
combo. We had the combo CD that was Civilization and also the Mantis XF 5200 Space Fighter, whatever. Weird retro. Like I almost like I actually looked that up the other night at one point just to make sure that I hadn't completely imagined that game, because it was
Right.
one of those things that just like nobody ever talks about anymore. But I played so much Civilization. You know, we got into some of the old DOS games like Commander Keen and that whole series. You know, and then for a long time, you know, we grew up in the American South, and there was a lot of kind of like concern about the impact that video games could have on kids, the impact that screen time can have on kids. There was a lot of concern about, you know, very closely controlling the media that we had access to, and all of that. And I'm not assigning any moral value to any of that, but just like sharing that as a fact of my life growing up, that like a lot of those games that I got exposed to early, it was kind of like a 10-year gap later. I spent the junior and senior years of my time in high school, the last 2 years before I went to college, I actually went off to a kind of a boarding magnet school in state. And I went there, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, there's Diablo 2. There's Counter-Strike. There's like all these things that I'm just not going to mention to mom and dad that my roommate showed me how to play, and they're like really fun. And so I do feel a little bit like I missed out on like kind of a 10-year period of some of those classic games. And in some ways I'm still like trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And get back on some of those old classics that I missed.
Well, the fact that you played Master of Orion 2 is big in my regard. Like, not a lot of folks have played that from back in the day. And I still think to this day, I still fire it up from time to time because it's such a fun space 4X game. And you can really, like, it's just this amazing mix of, like, you can make it an empire that's like Star Trek or Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica, or like, there's so many different facets that you can choose from when you're building your empire. It's really cool.
And there was a brief window in time when Stellaris just came out. That Stellaris was like the spiritual successor to Mood 2.
Really?
It was amazing. And then Paradox did their thing, and they just kept changing how the game works and launching expansion packs, and it just kind of like it's a completely different game now. Not necessarily in a bad way, but as somebody who played it when it first came out and was like, this is Mood 2, like this is what I've been missing. It was a little sad to see that game continue to evolve.
Well, yeah, I own it and started playing it, but I didn't get that feeling at all. But I only bought it like a year or so ago, so I never got to.
So that's like well after they made a lot of those changes.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, interesting.
All right, so we're kind of winding down a little bit-ish, sort of kind of towards the end of the main question. So chat, again, if you have any questions for WellBredGrapefruit, feel free to throw them into chat, and we will save them. If you're comfortable talking about this on stream, feel cool. What is the weirdest thing your child has stuck in their nose, ear, or other mouth that you're willing to talk about on stream and relate to all of those in chat that have children?
This was one of the questions that Taco sent, wasn't it?
Yes.
Sometimes you can just tell, right? From the way it's framed. We've actually been pretty fortunate in that regard. I mean, our children injure themselves all the time in other creative ways. We actually just this past Sunday had to spend time with our youngest, who is turning 5 in about a week. We had to spend time with him in the emergency room because he tripped and fell on the floor. not on anything on the floor, but on the perfectly flat, level hardwood floor,
Yep.
and somehow cut his chin, underneath his chin, cut that open to where he needed 5 stitches.
Holy crap.
And I still don't know how that is physically possible, but it happened.
Mm-hmm.
But so far as like various bodily orifices goes, we've not had any insertion incidents. So
Good.
It's beautiful.
I hate to disappoint, but we're free and clear for now. And now that I've said that, I'm sure that right now one of the boys is like, "Here, shove this up your nose," just because that's how it works. And that's why Taco wanted to ask that question, was to manifest that outcome for me.
Obviously, because
So, WellBred Grapefruit, on that note of crazy shenanigans, how often do you have streams where it's just your back as you work in the background?
Just the once.
Okay.
That's from Iltacine again. This was very early in my streaming career, but again, I was telling Druid and Stormy this before we got started. This is my home office where we are here. And so this is my gaming desk that I'm kind of gesturing at here. And then I have my work desk is back over here on this other wall. And again, back in the day, I had the green screen and everything that was behind me. And again, I have ADHD. It's really easy for me to forget things in various processes and things like that. This is why I have a lot of this actually automated now with Firebots, so that I don't have to worry about forgetting to hit a button and leave things going. But I wrapped up stream, said goodbye to everybody, raided out, put the green screen away, went over and started having meetings at work, and then I get this ping from Milt on Discord that's like, "So, you're still live, right?" So yeah, that was a VOD that went away pretty quickly, and we tried not to talk about it, and then now everybody knows, so it's fine. Thanks.
I just wanted to say that I actually did that quite recently, and where I rated out, and then I switched because normally, because I have a button system that I press to end stream after I raid out and everything, but something distracted me, and as things do, and I also forgot to actually end stream, so I went straight over to my full screen that I normally do for Discord when we're doing here and stuff, and then I walk away, and I come back to my computer an hour and a half later, and it was still up, and people were just chatting to each other in chat, just talking about my sad, lonely chair. So I get it. That font also been deleted, so I get it.
I have a friend who he married a doctor, and his wife diagnosed him with ADHD because at one point she came home and she opened the microwave and there was an unpopped bag of popcorn in the microwave. So he had opened the microwave and put the bag of popcorn in the microwave and closed the door, and then gotten distracted before he could even hit the popcorn button on the microwave and completely forgot that it was there. And that's kind of an extreme example, but that's sort of where I've gotten with my own stuff, and particularly with the streaming setup and everything, is just that I can't trust myself to get from point A to point B. And I need to, I have this 50 instruction long Firebot queue of automation things that I've programmed that's okay, so we're going to do this, and we're going to show this, and we're going to do that, and then we're going to turn this off, and then we're going to switch here, and then we're going to end stream, and then we're going to turn everything off, and it's going to be great.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. The power of Firebot. One of these days I should record my morning routine, because literally I just I start half things, and then I go, oh, I was doing this thing, and then I just jump back and forth between 3 or 4 different things before they all eventually become finished projects.
Yep. It's a deal. It's a deal.
It's
for
literally
sure.
just me wandering in circles It's beautiful. If you need context, I will elaborate. But WellBred Grapefruit, if you were to bake me a turkey, should I be delighted or frightened?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't bake you a turkey. I would roast you a turkey.
Okay, fair enough.
Those are that's an important distinction.
Beautiful.
I think turkey gets a bad rap. And I was talking about that leading into Thanksgiving. I think a lot of people don't know how to properly prepare and cook a turkey, and they end up with a turkey that is dry. And I got a little passionate about sharing the steps I take to ensure a delicious Thanksgiving turkey. And some people, I had, well, I think it was Fapplejacks was another streamer who was in chat with me at the time, and he was like, I almost got out a timer or counter or something that I could hit every time you said the phrase dry brine. I was gonna like tick it up and see how often you said it in the 30 minutes that you were talking about turkeys. Like, so beautiful. That's the context I got. I think it's good. It gets a lot of good notes. It's Kenji Alt Lopez, if you know him as a celebrity chef and everything, it's largely the way that he recommends doing it, and I feel like that's pretty good company to keep. But
cool.
I spatchcocked my turkey for the first time this year, and it turned out pretty good. So
I can't bring myself to spatchcock it. I need to. I know that's a recommended thing, but I stick with the America's Test Kitchen. You do it upside down at a high temperature for the first 45 minutes, and then flip it the rest of the way, and that helps everything even out without having to cut the spine out.
I was talking to one of my regular customers, and he bakes his turkey in a paper bag.
But then you don't get the crisp on the skin.
He says it makes it super crispy on the skin because it helps kind of pull out some of that. I don't know. And I was just like, I'm going to have to do some research on this because that seems really weird.
Yeah, this is my facial press X to doubt right now.
Press X.
But I am open but skeptical.
Yeah, it was one of those
on
things
that
where
particular topic.
I was like, are you sure about that? He's like, my grandpa's been doing that forever, so
But thanks for calling the Butterball helpline. Next caller, please.
Yeah, please don't. It feels like it's gonna catch on fire. It stresses me out too much. Anyways.
So, WellBred Grapefruit, would you rather be Zaphod Beeblebrox or Slaughter Bart Fast?
I feel like Zaphod, particularly with the two heads, is a lot more of the ADHD spirit animal. And so I just feel like naturally I align that way a little bit better. Although Slaughter Bart Fast did get to do a lot of really great work on the fjords, so it's close, but I think I'm going to have to lean in on Zaphod.
Awesome. Thank you. That one is straight for me.
WellBred Grapefruit, what is the weirdest sleeping dream you've ever had that you're willing to share with the folks in chat?
So one that I had, and this is one that I just have to mention it at all to my wife, and she actually cracks up in hysterics. I get, particularly when I'm going through stressful periods, I tend to have some really strange stress dreams. I think somehow my brain has moved on past the whole like, oh, well, you're at school, but you haven't been to class all year and there's an exam tomorrow and also you're naked. Like, that's all pedestrian stuff at this point, I had kind of a stress dream that we had, for some reason, we had taken a trip to somewhere like China. And you know how your brain works, right? Like, it's not like there's a big, like, welcome to China. But like, for some reason in my head, that's what I associate it with. Some big foreign country with strict rules and regulations. And our car had broken down on the side of the highway. And I had to get down the highway to the next gas station in order to get help for the car. But it was illegal to be on the road without being on a vehicle. And so, like, what could I do? Like, I can't just sit here. I have to do something, but I also can't get out on the road without a vehicle. And for whatever reason, in my stress dream, dead sleep in the middle of the night state, I was like, okay, but I have a pencil. And so what if I hold the pencil and kind of act like I'm riding a bicycle down the side of the road? Maybe I can get down to the next exit ramp and get off the interstate and not get pulled over by the police.
Did it work?
I think so. I think it did. But of course, I don't necessarily remember a lot about what happened afterwards because, your recall for stuff like that is best the next morning.
Sure.
And I'm
Yep.
telling my wife this story, and I get to that point where I'm like, so I decided to like hop on my pencil and write down, and she lost it. And that was just the end of my storytelling there. I never got to finish the rest of the dream. So I don't know that I remember it all that well anymore, but that part still sticks out at me. And every once in a while she's like, remember that dream with the pencil? And then just dies laughing.
Nice. So
So much.
on this kind of the same note, if you could have any superpower, which one would you choose and why?
There's a lot of great options out there. Flight would have been really handy in that dream. But I think the thing that and this is one of those weird, like, you can go back and forth and you debate all that other stuff. The whole, like, the Flash, I'm not typically as much a fan of the DC superhero genre and all that, but that whole, like, access to the Speed Force and being able to go super quick and like all the different things. Again, I feel like that just kind of that appeals to the whole ADHD side of, like, there's never enough time to do things, or you always have to be in two places at once, or everything's last minute and you got to hurry. And the idea of being able to, like, be in situations like that and everything be okay and it not be a stressor, and like, I have access to something I can use to solve this problem, I think is a really attractive option. So that's what I'll go with,
Cool.
at least right now.
Nice.
I love it. I love it. All right, last question. Change it up a little bit from
We should change up from that. That's a weird topic.
I know. It's hard to follow. It's hard for people to follow sometimes, but here we are. It's okay. Would you rather have a whole grapefruit or a half a grapefruit?
I enjoy grapefruit, but I feel like a half of one is fine. I feel like a half of one is fine. Any more than that, and you're just overindulging.
Yeah, and we don't want that.
No.
What about in regards to the greater philosophical question of life being like a grapefruit? Would you rather?
Yeah, well, I mean, some folk have half of one for breakfast, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the greater philosophical sense of the question, like, I think really all anybody wants to do, whether they're doing it consciously or not, is they want to have as full of a grapefruit as they can.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed.
And so, I'm just going to push this metaphor way past whatever limit it should have ever been pushed past. But the more you can fill your grapefruit, the better you're going to be. And if you can prioritize filling your grapefruit, you should.
Well said. I love it.
Damn right. Damn right.
So now Druid is going to share all of your linkage with the folks. Everyone, you need to go pop over there right now and follow and check out his streams and drop the subs and the biddies and help support this man in his endeavors, because he's exactly the kind of juicy, succulent person we need on Twitch.
There's that word again, but okay, I'll take it.
And tart too.
True. Now that one doesn't bother me as much. That seems on brand.
We already have quite a few questions from chat. Stormy, if you want to start off.
Sure. Caffeinated Zombie asks, what were some challenges you faced early on and how did you overcome them? I'm assuming she means streaming or maybe just in general.
Yeah, well, at first I couldn't walk and that took time. No.
Yeah.
Early on,
I love that.
Early on streaming, I think, and we talked about this a little bit, just some of, like, finding my voice and figuring out what felt good and what didn't feel good. And I think that was a challenge. And also just the overwhelm. I think the there's a lot of perfectionism. And again, some of this, I don't want to say like ADHD is the answer to everything because it's not, but there's a lot of like all or nothing thinking that you can lean into when you grow up with that, especially undiagnosed. And there's a lot of like, I have to do it perfectly or it's not worth doing that comes with that. And just trying to push to let go of that. And like, it's okay if I have a conflict and I can't stream on my scheduled time today. And it's okay that this particular part of my layout doesn't look totally professional yet. And it's okay that I haven't really finished this command the way that I wanted to. Like, being able to let go of that and just kind of, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. Like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And coming to accept that is I think, something that's kind of a struggle in a lot of endeavors for me, but particularly for streaming, where it's like this is going out and people can watch it, and it's going to be like Twitch is going to keep the VOD up for 2 weeks, and they're going to see that this font is ugly or whatever. Like that was kind of a lot to let go of early on.
Yes.
Well said.
The lesson to learn is you can always change it.
Oh yeah, super easy.
Always do it later.
Just tear it down and start over, right?
I've done that a couple times. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand how to pronounce the name. Okay, Jackrabbit72 asks, I've been struggling with like how am I supposed to say this name? What in the world? Oh my, I figured it out. We got there. All right, Jackrabbit72 asks, how many from chat have you met IRL that aren't in your normal circles? Have you met?
I have actually met nobody in chat IRL. As far as I know. How did that happen? Sorry. I have Firebot open, and Mighty Stoosh just redeemed a redeem I have on my channel that plays a loud bong sound in the background. And I was like, I'm not even streaming. How did this happen?
That's funny.
That was just super distracting.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Stoosh. Love you, buddy. As far as I know, there is nobody that has been in my chat that I know in real life. There are a couple of people now that I'm like, I know your real name, kind of like we know each other that way. But for the most part, it's a pretty separate community. For me, being online on Twitch and my real life persona, that's partially intentional because of the kinds of jobs that I do, being an executive at tech startups and all that. I would really like to be able to get in and vent a little bit about work and not have that end up blowing back, that kind of thing is nice to have that separation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's in the spirit of the question, but that's where I'm at. And again, I've only been doing this for a year. I've not, I've not had an opportunity to go to TwitchCon or, any of those other things and like meet people in person yet either.
Yeah.
So it's still pretty nascent.
Closet Scully, hi Scully, asks, does chat have a nickname for you? And if they do, what is it?
Lots of nicknames. I was running through several of them earlier. Probably my favorite, and the one that I think is most charming, Wubbaga is a name that is kind of stuck.
Wubbagut. I love that.
There's a stream, and she's a fantastic streamer, spifferific. She was like, WellBredGrapefruit is too long to say. WBG is not any easier because of W's weird edge case of actually taking longer to pronounce as a letter than whatever word you're substituting it for. And she has kind of a quirk with initials like that, where she just kind of like just makes it easier to vocalize like that. And so she started calling me Wubbaga, and it just kind of stuck and took off everywhere. And so that's probably the best, not just like a shortened form of my name, but something that is actually kind of a new nickname in and of itself. That's the best example that I have.
I love it.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Slig's got the emote there in chat. I've closed Firebot now, Stoosh. So we're done. It's not going to work.
Saku asks, what's your favorite multiplayer?
Ooh. It depends on what I'm going for. You know, again, a lot of the survival craft have really great multiplayer modes. Grounded is a ton of fun for me, and I love getting in and playing that with other people. Valheim is a ton of fun. Um, that's probably the best overlap. That kind of like holy trinity, you know, the automation and colony management and survival craft. Out of those three, the one category that is really well suited for multiplayer is survival craft. You can do it with automation, but it's hard because you have to have really clear lines for like you're doing this and I'm doing this. And colony management, it just almost doesn't work because like you need to have somebody who's in charge, right? And that's got to be you, obviously, because you're the one who knows what you're doing.
Yep.
Outside of that, though, and I'm going to say this, and I appreciate that I'm going to immediately lose a lot of credit in people's eyes. I also get a lot of enjoyment right now out of playing League of Legends and MOBAs like that. It's another one of those things that it can be super frustrating, and the community can be super toxic, and I know all those things. But there's so much going on in any given game and so many variables, and there's always an opportunity to improve. And it's another one of those things that just like clicks, you know?
Yep. It's okay. I support you for liking League of Legends.
Yeah, you like what
If
you
anybody-
want to like. 100%. Caffeinated Zombie asks, how do you view your community? Can you share some positive thoughts about them?
With my eyes, usually.
I love it.
Yours. Can I share some positive thoughts about my community? The thing that I really love, and I get, you know, again, I give a lot of credit for this to Tholen and Iltacine and Firehammer and Fapplejackson, a lot of these people that I got in with, you know, really early. We play a lot of games that have very steep learning curves. There's a lot of complexity. And I think there are two different ways that you can end up approaching, I mean, really anything in life that has a learning curve like that. You can approach it from a lens of, and I'm going to just use a harsh word here. You can approach it from a lens of elitism. You can approach it from a lens of, I have learned how to do this. I am now a holder of the sacred knowledge. And if you don't do it the way that I think you should do it, you are doing it wrong. And I need to help correct you and put you on the right path. I think there are a lot of people out there that are like that. And, you know, I think anybody here who's streamed Oxygen Not Included or Factorio or any of these other games, like, you've probably had some people like that pop into your chat. RimWorld. Yeah. You've probably had some people like that pop into your chat. You're building your freezer like that, you know?
Yes, I am. And
is that a problem? Yeah. And the thing that I really love about the community that I don't even want to say that I've cultivated feels very like, again, very self-important, right? The community that I have found, you know, stepping into this, because a lot of this is like a community that already existed that I just kind of like sidled up to, like you do a group at a party. But it's a community that I think really embraces creativity and learning and curiosity and like having fun. And,
Nice.
you know, we can still have conversations and we can still, you know, push on each other about like, are we doing things the right way, or, you know, areas where we have disagreement. We can ask Gilt about polar solar in Dyson Sphere program and whether or not that's something that you should do. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, play the game, right? And have fun. And like, maybe you'll learn something from somebody else who does something different. And I think that's a really, if there's one cohesive thing about the community, just from a like something that I really appreciate about the people that I get to hang out with while I'm playing games, that's definitely very high on the list.
So good.
Jackrabbit asks another interesting question for you, and I want to chime in with this one too after you do. Being an 80s kid, did you ever play Wasteland?
Wasteland is one of the ones that I missed, unfortunately. It's like I'm aware of Wasteland. I would love to get in and poke at Wasteland. I think it's one of those games that I didn't even know it existed, and except probably within the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
Because it was just in that weird window that I wasn't exposed to it.
I have to add that even though I grew up playing almost all those types of games, I missed that one too, which I don't know how I missed it, but I did play Dragon Wars, which I think was the same developer and was a precursor to it, except in a fantasy setting. And then I ended up picking up Wasteland 2 a few years ago, and then Wasteland 3, which obviously were much newer, much later. But great games, and I loved those experiences. A little bit of interesting trivia. Fallout was inspired by Wasteland, but a lot of people don't know this.
That's
but
how it
Wasteland,
came to my attention, was finding out that history.
Right. But a lot of people don't know this. It goes back even further. Wasteland was inspired by a TTRPG called Gamma World, which came shortly after Dungeons and Dragons. So a little bit of interesting trivia there.
It all goes back to a TTRPG in the end, one way or another.
Yep.
One way or another.
All back to the source.
Saku asks, how many bananas were put in the VCRs? This was asked during when we were talking about your kids.
How many bananas did my kids put in VCRs?
I'm guessing.
My oldest kid is 10 years old. I think VCRs had quit to be a thing for a good decade or more before he was born. So I'm just going to have to go with, there's a great concept in Zen Buddhism. There's the Japanese word mu, which essentially means I unask your question because it is invalid. And that is, I think, the only appropriate response I can have to that question, Saku. As much as I love you, we're gonna have to call that one a draw.
Mighty Stoosh. I love that name. How much sugar is too much sugar to put on my grapefruit?
I'll share my personal opinion, and then I'll share the actual correct answer to that. My personal opinion is that any sugar is too much sugar to put on your grapefruit. But I think the actual answer is the only time you have too much sugar on your grapefruit is if it's more sugar than you want on your grapefruit.
I love it. Very diplomatic. Both answers are correct.
I'm not here to yuck your yum, right? Like, do your thing.
Well said.
Glowraz X Glow.
Oh, that's Glow. I wonder if he was here to hear me talk about Spelunky. Anyway, go ahead.
Does that mean nobody at your work knows that you stream?
People at work know that I stream. I have mentioned that is a hobby that I have. Nobody has asked for my streamer handle, and I have not volunteered it. So people know that I do it, but I've been kind of intentional about not being like, and you can find me on Twitch at WellBredGrapefruit. For the reasons that we were talking about at the time that Glow asked that question. Yeah.
Wow. Elkasine asks, what is the oldest piece of tech you still have? That's a fun question.
Oh, what is the oldest piece of tech I still have? This feels like probably a cheaty answer to the question because it's not at all what Ilt was expecting to get. But probably the oldest piece of tech that I have is actually a ham radio that dates back to late 80s, early 90s. An old Kenwood amateur radio, right? Yeah, worldwide thing that you can do where you can get a license to operate radio on amateur frequencies, usually with Morse code, although more and more lately it's been voice transmission. And I have an old radio in a box in my workshop out back that I still need to get an antenna strung up for at some point. But that's probably the oldest piece of tech that I actually still have on hand.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I have a question that we got from somebody on the other side, a secret person, super secret, ultra super secret person. One of the two options that you know. If you were Twitch CEO,
Taco.
what would be your focus for the first day, first month, first year?
That's a tricky question for me because on the one hand, if I was hired to be Twitch's CEO, this is not at all the approach that I would have.
Beautiful.
Because
Love it.
they wouldn't have hired me to do it because that's not what they want, right? Like Twitch is a for-profit company, and that's the thing. But probably my first priority would be let's unwind some of the focus that we've had over the past, and I say this as somebody who's been on Twitch for a year, but what I see coming out of Twitch as somebody who has done a lot of software development and worked at product companies, I can kind of intuit that their priority is trying to drive engagement because engagement makes them money.
Yes.
Which is why they've been pushing things like stories. It's why they've been pushing things like the knock feature. It's, they're trying to find ways to kind of keep people on the site as much as they can. And to me, that is an example of, we have this concept in the product development world where we talk about what's called dark UX. And probably the greatest perpetrator of dark UX that anyone here might have had familiarity with is LinkedIn. LinkedIn has all kinds of stuff where it's like, hey, you've been noticed by 3 people. Like, click here to see who they were. And like, you have to go and then you click through a few more things and then they try to upsell you to premium and you have to make sure that you click the right button in order to not get upsold to premium. And that's where that mindset to me ends up when you try to farm engagement. You end up trying to ultimately, like, you try to be manipulative. You try to push people into engaging when they don't actually have any intent of doing it because that's the only way to make the numbers go up. And the attitude that I would want to push day 1, week 1, month 1, year 1, whatever time frame you want to push is more the field of dreams model of like, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Let's stop trying to force viewers to engage by giving them more prompts and triggers and trying to manipulate their dopamine-seeking brains into clicking the shiny new notification that just showed up. And let's start enabling streamers to create more compelling content that naturally brings people in.
Yeah.
It's not going to make the numbers spike in the same way that releasing stories and all this other stuff does. But it also, whatever engagement it creates is going to sustain. And so it's not going to like spike, but it's also not going to fall off immediately once people get bored of clicking through. I mean, I don't know about y'all. My stories light up every day and I don't ever look at them anymore because
I never look at them.
It's always the same 5 streamers that I follow who post a story every time they go live saying, hey, I'm going live. And then I get a notification from Twitch that the streamer I follow just went live. So, just that would be, and that's maybe like an overly serious question or answer to Taco's question, but that's my take.
No, it's a fair, very well thought out take.
Yeah. No, it's yes. I love everything that you've said so much. Because for me, like, the stories are so annoying. The knock feature, I can't even begin to start going down that rabbit hole. And Saku's just like, I secretly hate the concept of like watch streaks. Yeah, that just has this weird feeling to it. I've noticed a lot of people don't like that either. Yeah, it just feels like pressure. And when most of Twitch is neurodivergent, and most neurodivergent people hate being told what to do. How dare you tell me 5 times? Because I'm not doing it. I'm not going back now. You can't make me.
I had already decided I wasn't going to do it at the second time you told me what to do. The other 3 times, all you did was piss me off.
You just made it worse. And I'm never going back to that streamer again. And it's your fault, Twitch, not the streamer's fault.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for understanding my vent. I appreciate you.
Good.
You brought up the knock feature, and I felt the visceral anger rush through my entire body.
Yeah. Well, but Gut, if you had a time machine and it could only go back in time to places where live music is being played for 6 hours, Where are you going? What band are you going to see?
That's a weirdly specific question that I assume also came from Taco, because it is weirdly specific. Go back to live music for 6 hours. Um, I mean, there's a lot of tempting answers, right? I mean, as much of a cluster as Woodstock was in '69, right? Like the opportunity to go back and see, I think particularly Hendrix perform what he did and see that live is, um, something that would be hard to pass up. Uh, I think there's some other, like, we could talk about other phenomenons like the Beatles and all that. I'm gonna turn this around just a little bit though, because I had a coworker ask me kind of a similar question about, like, if there was one musical artist who died, basically but in their 20s, that you could bring back to life and like go back in time and save, kind of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
because of the influence that they would have on music, who would it be?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think you go back to somebody like Buddy Holly,
Mm.
right? Very early, very talented, died young. I think Freddie Mercury is another really good option in that same vein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also a sense in which, Queen was already so prolific, and the influence, the impact that they had on the music industry was already so large. Like, yeah, I would love to have Freddie around longer. But just the kind of differential there in terms of like how early we were in the whole rock and roll guitar driven music vibe when Buddy Holly passed away. And that's kind of a tempting secondary answer. I feel like Woodstock is the obvious, like, you got to go back to Woodstock, right? But
Yeah.
being able to go back and catch some of that really early, like, we're just starting to like blend all these different influences together into what we call modern rock and roll.
Hmm.
That feels like that could also be magical.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I'm not gonna ask that one. What's your favorite dad joke?
Um, I've learned there's a name for my favorite kind of dad joke. Um, my favorite kind of dad joke is apparently called a fagoot. And a fagoot is a dad joke that takes like 15 to 20 minutes to tell. And you're setting up a whole bunch of context and, adding a whole bunch of superfluous information into this story that you're telling, all to end up in a terrible pun. And so one of my favorite, and this is one that I've had for years, and I'll lay the outline of it. I'm not going to take the whole 15 minutes, but I've already told this one on stream, so I feel like it's safe for me to share it. It's one of my all-time favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But you tell this whole story about these like bandits somewhere in medieval Europe who ran across a cart where they found some plants that a trader was carrying, and they decided, oh, we're going to try and go work legit. We're going to go to this town and we're going to set up shop and sell plants. But one of the plants is this carnivorous plant that over the few days that they're there trying to sell, like, it tries to eat a cat, it tries to eat a dog, it tries to eat a kid, and like the townspeople keep getting upset and they can't, like, they're deadlocked because some people love the plant variety and some people are worried for their safety. And it gets around to the end, and like they have to go find this hermit who has been living out away from society on the edge of town, this hermit named Hugh. And he's the only one who can finally break the gridlock. He just comes in and tells the people that they, the bandits who have come in, they've been pretending to be monks this whole time, selling flowers, and he tells them that they have to leave, and so they pack up and leave. And the moral of the story is that only Hugh can prevent forest fires.
Oh my God.
And so that face that you're making right now, Druid, that was after me very quickly in 30 seconds running through the setup to that joke. I want you to imagine that feeling after I've been leading you on for about 10 minutes of storytelling. And then that punchline. That's my favorite kind of joke. That's what I thrive on personally.
That is perfect. We're about to wrap up. That is a perfect wrap up, except for one more question that we have for you before we let you go, because that encapsulates the feeling of that we're getting for this amazing interview today. But just so we know, share with us if you could play only one video game for the rest of your life, what game are you playing?
Oh, that's hard.
Mm.
That's really hard.
Why would it be DSP?
Why would it be DSP? I don't think it. I actually don't think it would be. I don't think it would be DSP. That's part of what makes it hard. It would have to be something that has an awful lot of replay value.
Mm-hmm.
And I love DSP, and I'm not saying it doesn't have replay value, but it is. If it was all you were playing, it would get kind of old. And this is it's a desert island question, right? Like if you only have one kind of food on a desert island, what would it be and why? And it doesn't matter how much you love that burrito that you get from your burrito place. If it's the only thing you eat, you're gonna get tired of it. You need something with versatility.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what makes it so hard. I would have to say it would probably be something like a Civilization game or some kind of 4X game. I mean, hell, while we're at it, right? Like Mutu, let's just go ahead and throw that out there, right? It's like
that would have been my guess.
Candidate.
That would have been my answer too. That's awesome.
Because it's something where there's a lot of that complexity to engage with, but there's also enough randomness in the setup and a lot of different challenges that you can throw yourself at. And I mean, even think about Civilization. Think about the difference between playing on the default difficulty and upping it one.
Yeah.
Right, and just the completely different way that you have to approach the game. Something like that. If I only had to limit myself to one. But then I also have to be honest and say, like, I don't know that I can think of a single day where there was only one video game I played in recent history. So it's just, that's part of what makes it such a hard thing to wrap my head around, is like picturing just one game the rest of my life when I'm already predisposed to, like, I have this Steam library and I can just bounce around like a kid in a candy store between whatever seems to spike my interest over here.
Well said,
Here
sir.
I am. I keep getting sucked back into Skyrim.
What was that, Druid? You...
Me. Oh, and I said, and then here I am getting sucked back into Skyrim all of the time.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. That was a perfect answer for a perfectly tart and succulent person. Sorry,
He's gonna keep saying
every time.
I mean, you're just like
not a cactus.
You're a well-bred grapefruit, though. So,
damn it, Jim.
I just want to say once again, thank you for joining us. It's been an honor to have you. And
thanks for having me.
I'm so happy we got to meet.
It's been a lot of fun.
Everyone, go support this amazing human being.
Do it. Do it now. Take care. Welcome.
That's a lot of links.
Yes, she shared all the linkage. Thank you guys for introducing us to him. Thank you, Iltacine and Taco. You're amazing. I appreciate you guys because Well-Bred Grapefruit, just the I call him tart and succulent, but he's also very sweet, and that's awesome. And brilliant too. Just like he's definitely my kind of gamer. So maybe sometime in the future, Well-Bred, we can play some War Tales multiplayer together if we can find the time. Anywho. Thank you guys. It's time for us to wrap up the show. Next week, we have one of our fellow own streamer Stormkeep. Nomi's going to be on the show. Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. She's an amazing human being. We met her through Wookiees and Cookies. She's actually, like it's interesting. Wookiees is down in SA. I'm in Austin. She's in a city that's 3 hours north of here and in Texas, and so it's kind of cool. So one of these days the three of us will have to get together. But first, next week on Friday, we're going to interview her. Also, because my internet went down yesterday and we weren't able to have It Is Depayne on Legacy Lore Masters, we're going to be having him on the 19th, which I do believe is next Thursday. So remember. Assuming that some random event doesn't cause my internet to go down for 12 hours, we will be having Legacy Lore Masters B&B on Thursday with It Is Depayne, and then Nomi on regular B&B Friday. And sometime the next week, I'll try and restart up my Witcher workout stream that I didn't get to do. So thank you guys for being patient. Don't forget, we got D&D tomorrow. Yeah. Anything else to add there, Druid?
I love you guys.
I love it. All right, let's do this, shall we?
Yee.
Thanks for coming to the show.
Please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below.
And if you're listening to the podcast,
Please rate and review the episode.
we are Bandwidth.
And Banter.
Thank you.
And good night.